We're
always
looking
to be
at
here.
the 2024 Armed Forces Remembrance Day. The president kicked off the celebration yesterday by unveiling the emblem or the logo for that celebration, and also, approved, the allocation of 18 billion life assurance support for families of fallen heroes. Let me take that to you. Let the news analysis start with you now. What's your take on this?
I think it's a very welcome development, like Blessing has rightly alluded to. There's a whole lot of ways to motivate people and drive their commitment toward the service for the nation. And I think this is one of the gestures that is quite welcoming. And again, it's also speaking to the fact that our president seems to understand that there is a connect between how you treat your workers and the level of delivery that you can expect from them. At the Economic Summit Forum, he was quite clear the other day speaking about public servants and to say that government needs to do a whole lot more to assist them and to drive their passion towards serving the nation. And just like you said, Femi, it's difficult for somebody to commit or give his life to the service of a nation. And then, of course, he's dead. And then the wife and children, you chase them out of the barracks and they have nowhere to live. And then you have just to ask yourself, why were this necessary? And even the children of such fallen heroes do not even want to serve in that kind of capacity. And that's why you see that our public service, a lot of things happen because the way the past service officers were treated directly impact on how current people see service. So for me, it's welcoming. I was still saying to some people here yesterday, there's so much that we have not done about the use of insurance as a veritable tool for motivation. What this means is that, of course, these people are insured and they are given life insurance so that in case of death, these people, family can actually have something to fall on and then continue to live. And this is a motivation. You just imagine that every serviceman understood that if I serve this nation and I pay the ultimate price or sacrifice to defend my fatherland, I have some amount of money, 100 million, that is put on my head by the federal government, which of course my family can draw from the insurance if I'm no longer here. Such person will be willing to put down his life, and that also shows that the nation valued them. And I think these are some of the things that we would need to explore going forward to see that we find the necessary commitment from those who serve the nation to put their life on the line in the defense of our sovereignty.
Let's look at the issue of insecurity, and according to the Minister for Budget, he emphasized the importance of private sector investing in combating security. I always say we always believe government should do everything, but also there's a need for private organization to also contribute their own part of it, and that's what the minister is saying here, that apart from what government to do to combat security, there's need for private sector to also invest in that sector, or even private individuals who are, security experts or who run security outfits to also contribute to their part to national development. Hidauza, how do you feel about this news?
Well, again, it's like also moving Lagos to Abuja, so to speak, because Tinubu in his tenure as the governor of Lagos State actually had put in place Lagos State Security Trust Fund, where private individuals and businesses in Lagos had to contribute certain amount. And then, of course, this was used to support the rapid response squad in Lagos. And that's why you see the level of security that we have in Lagos as of today. So I think it's something that is welcoming, because if the society is not secure, not safe, your investment as a business will not be safe, and you cannot really make the desired profit as you would want to have it. So for me, it's quite logical for private business people to put in some resource to drive and help secure and provide safety for businesses and for those who work. That being said, managing it is another thing. And I do hope that, of course, there will be a special committee that's comprising both the media, the civil society groups, and then, of course, captains of industries who will determine how this so mobilized fund will be used, and they are channeled into the right places to guarantee life and properties of people who live within the territory of Nigeria.
We're looking at the war against terrorism, and the Nigeria Army launches successful operation against terrorists in Sokoto. You know, you have this trend where terrorism was more prevalent in the northeast, Borno and others is like that, you know, but because due to increased activities of military presence, military, you know, activities, some of them are being displaced now and they are moving, you know, to states like Kaduna and Sokoto, and that's why even Zamfara, because of the existence of gold mine and some interest there. And so these terrorists are just not based in the northeast anymore because they are just moving to other parts due to the military activities. But now there's a need to launch a military presence in a state like Sokoto, and that's why to tackle this terrorism, we must agree that it's becoming, in fact, it's a global phenomenon, not becoming. And then there's a need to put all the things in their arsenal together to ensure that they tackle the issue of terrorism. Let me take this to a man in Morocco, Idauza. What's your take on this?
It's quite good to think about using hard power to fight terrorism. But I think there's something that we must come to terms with is terrorism functions or thrive with poverty. And this is one of the issues that, of course, government will need to pay close attention to. That, yeah, using guns to drive terror will not eventually fight it. Because when you look at it, especially given the Karl Marx postulations on how people will think in a given situation, that people are given to terrorists as if they are fighting against capital. Now, if you want to deal with this issue, what you need to really do is, and this is where government needs to up their game in terms of empowering the people, especially the very poor and vulnerable, who can easily yield to those who are profiting from terrorism. I had a kind of a testimonial yesterday from one of our service personnel who were here together, and he was telling me that when he was the command brigade in Bassa in Borno State, what he did to actually ensure that young people were empowered and he encouraged them into farming. And a lot of them are doing excellently well. And they also commended the governor of Borno State, who also has also come to their aid in terms of providing tractors for them to do beans farming. And he said even himself, who participated in the scheme, had about 300 bags of beans harvested last year alone. And I think this is where government really needs to help people to understand that if people have hope for living means of livelihood, they will not give to terror. So we must fight poverty and ensure that there is no breeding ground for terrorists in our environment.
FG announcing policy to review contract reforms, you know, in Nigeria.
It's part of the things that we're actually doing here. This study tour to Morocco is actually to empower public servants in terms of embracing e-procurement and then, of course, developing a solicitation document. And that's been what has occupied us here in the last 3 or 4 days, looking at how we can save the nation unnecessary stress of litigation. We thank God that recently the federal government by the Ministry of Justice and the Attorney General of the Federation has been able to successfully prosecute the P&ID case in London, which was supposed to have cost the nation uh, the sum of about 11 billion US dollars. That was enough to cripple the whole economy of Nigeria if P&ID had won that case. And if you saw what really happened in that case is that some private individual who represent government signed this contract without necessarily really looking at the terms, and then of course put the entire nation into trouble. And I think this is what government is trying to avoid, because there are a whole lot of cases and litigations where individuals who want to benefit from contracting had to do it, and sometimes they have to also break protocol without recourse to the Ministry of Justice, who is supposed, especially in the case of international contracting, to review and dot the I's and cross the T's. And this breach of procedure has been really prevalent. And so government is also really putting resources to see how to train procurement officers in terms of writing entering into agreement or contract with contractors and suppliers so that the nation is not so changed. I think it's a welcome development. We need to do all this. The Ministry of Justice also developing a software that, of course, will help like a template for all contracting for government business. And this will go a long way in reducing litigations and the fund that government spend in terms of prosecuting some of these cases that are not necessary.
How do you think this can be adopted in Nigeria? And what are the lessons for Nigeria, looking at this e-procurement?
Yeah, the Bureau for Public Procurement is doing a great deal, and especially they are the one also that has sponsored this training tour to Morocco. Last year, they had done same to the UAE, where all procurement officers had to be trained. The applications are being developed. It's in the final stage. Some government agencies, about 6 of the ministries or MDAs, have now been selected for the trial run of this e-procurement. And what this is going to do is that it will make the system more efficient, cost-effective, openness and transparency in the process of doing this business. Like the president said when he came in, he is determined to see how much of e-government we can have in Nigeria, where people can access government services, not based on who they know, but based on their competence and their capacity to deliver such goods. So what that will mean is that once this process kicks off, as we're expecting it to start the first quarter of 2024, a whole lot of sanity will come into the contracting system and then the procuring of public goods. Because like as it is said today, about 98% of all the fraud that happen in government happen at the corridor of procurement. And like you said, in terms of road contracting, when you give contract to people who don't have capacity or competence to do it, at the end of the day, you see a whole lot of things happening. And there are a whole lot of things in the Procurement Act, for example, that says if you don't have money, don't give contract out. But you also see that some civil servants are also contravening those rules, that even when they don't have resource, they are still awarding contracts and giving mobilizations. And then, of course, they know that they are not even actually able to deliver on these goods. So a whole lot of sanity will come into procurement process, and then it will save the nation hard-earned resource that is being wasted at the moment of corruptly being taken by very corrupt public officers. So this is where the government is going. It's no longer anything that somebody will be able to resist, especially even in terms of assessing grants and support from multilateral bodies. Is now also becoming a prerequisite for us to be able to gain facilities from World Bank or the Bretton Woods institutions, that we want to say, number one, that your procuring entity, they are climate conscious, and then of course they are also looking at best value for money. All these things are happening, and I think we're already embracing it. We are working toward it. BPP is doing a great deal in this regard to see that the entire process is sanitized.
IPPIS, your take on this?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think it was one of the best reform, especially in terms of personnel administration that has happened to us. We have had a lot back and forth, especially with the Academic Staff Union of Universities, who didn't want to be part of that project. And the reason, of course, was quite clear, and this is, of course, where government is also not communicating very well. What were their issues? They thought that their job is peculiar, and therefore there are some allowances that they are supposed to earn that, of course, are not being able to be programmed into that software, which was completely not correct from the ASU point of view. The truth of the matter was that there's a rule in the public service that if you're working for federal government, you cannot earn salary in two places. So what ASU were doing was the fact that if they want to go on sabbatical within the nation, they didn't need to go to sabbatical in a federal university. They could go to a sabbatical in a state-owned university, and that would have solved that problem. And we didn't need that extended period of argument of back and forth. So IPPS is to streamline and ensure that in the payroll of the public office, public servants, there are not duplications, that nobody is earning federal government salary in multiple places, and that cleans up the system, and the issues of ghost worker is resolved. And I think, again, this government is trying as much as possible to see how much to extend only branches to people who had refused to enlist in this project. But for me, it's one of the things that we must embrace as a people, and then, of course, see how we can really clean up our system and have a clean government where corruption is almost to zero.